What's up, man? I'm ready for some
Good
football.
to be back. Good to be back. And we actually have like real things to talk about as opposed to like 3 hours of clamoring on about whatever movie we saw last time like we used to do. So let's jump right into it. Not a lot of time, so let's jump right into the NFC side of things. Green Bay, San Francisco, this one going down in San Francisco for the second time this season. First time that these two squads got together. We watched San Francisco dominate Green Bay 37-8. But what I love most about that game, the statistics of that game, because San Francisco owned all of them. It really was, like, it wasn't a game. It was a straight-up beatdown. Jimmy Garoppolo, who is, we're going to talk about this in a minute, dangerously close to entering one-name guy territory. You got Drew, you got Tom, you got Russell. You're about to have Jimmy, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. 253, couple of touchdowns, 129 yards to soon-to-be WWE Hall of Famer George Kittle. My man is a legend already. 50 to Deebo Samuel. 120 rushing yards between three running backs in this game. And on top of that, the defense was on point, held Green Bay to 1 first down on third downs. They did everything in that game. So I'm going to toss this question to you. Why do I expect this one to be any different?
I don't think you should. You look back at that game, Aaron Rodgers 104 passing yards, Aaron Jones 2.9 yards per carry. This happened a couple times to Green Bay during the year. They went to L.A. and the Chargers beat them up, just completely manhandled them. I look at Green Bay, and they're a team that has one way to win. San Francisco's got multiple, but Green Bay, it has to be Aaron Rodgers. And you're looking at Aaron Rodgers having what might be the worst year of his career statistically. I mean, worst year in completion percentage, worst year in yards, second worst in touchdowns, second worst in yards per completion and yards per attempt. I think part of the reason you say that Jimmy's going to enter that one-name club is because he's about to beat Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship game. San Francisco is a complete team that plays defense. They run the ball. They throw the ball. Green Bay, it's got to be Aaron Rodgers because there's not even a running game that is consistently reliable. So
Aaron Jones show up a handful of games, and that was really it. And he wasn't there. And I want to elaborate on that because you said it's got to be Aaron Rodgers, and it does. But I think Aaron Rodgers is in the same territory that Tom Brady was in this season, which is who is he getting the ball to? Because even elite quarterbacks have got to have somebody to throw the ball to. They had Devontae Adams this year. 43 yards against San Francisco. Why is that? I'll tell you why. It's because San Francisco doesn't blitz because they don't have to, right? They have got arguably the most dominant defensive line in football. If not, it's top 3 or 4. You've got Nick Bosa, who has been an absolute machine this year. And what that allows when you come up with 5 sacks in playoff games, when you're coming up with 6 sacks like they did against Green Bay a few weeks ago, you can keep your DBs in coverage. Richard Sherman, who is having a renaissance in his career, right? When he left Seattle, came to San Francisco, everybody thought, that's it, that's the end, the Legion of Boom days are over. But this dude is holding quarterbacks to less than 47 QBR against him, and it's because he can sit back there, lock down one side of the field, and nobody's even really throwing at him because he's shutting down everybody.
So, and even more impressive that not only did he come to San Francisco at a time when his career was down, he tore his Achilles in the first year in San Francisco. And the fact that he's come back and done this, it's been impressive.
So Dee Ford comes back off of his injury. Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, Nick Bosa. Those 4 guys are the heart and soul of this defense. And this defense is very, very good. They have kept, they've surrendered the best, it is the best pass defense in the league, I would argue. Statistically speaking, fewest passing yards per attempt, fewest passing yards per game, fewest yards per completion, and fewest completions of 20-plus yards in the NFL. The one thing Green Bay will have to do is get Devontae Adams open. But they're doing it against the defense that doesn't let that happen. They take your number 1 away. When you look at even the San Francisco Saints game, because that's the one that stuck out to me, that was the game that I went, okay, this San Francisco team is a Super Bowl caliber team. They kept Mike Thomas, who was a 100-yard-a-game guy at that point. It's not like they stopped him, but they limited him as much as anybody else could have. And it took Drew Brees, best quarterback in the league, top 3, no question, and Mike Thomas, arguably the best receiver in the NFL, just to stay with San Francisco. And then the George Kittle Beastquake Volume 2.0 happened, and the Saints said, whatever, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, it's still bitter. But it was at that point that we knew San Francisco was a legit team. And everything they did against the Saints, they're going to do against Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is having the worst season of his career. Dude is still elite. Dude's still one of the best 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not going to dispute that. But he is going up against, or going up against the best passing defense. with the worst skill set he's ever had around him, right? Every year that he has been the Aaron Rodgers that everybody wants him to be, he's had an offense built around him that has been top tier. This year he's got Devontae Adams. He's got one running back who's having a good back half of the season, but not great. And that's it. Oh, and the offensive line in front of him, probably one of the worst he's had in a number of years in the back half of the season. What did they give up? 5 sacks last week. That basically cost them, or would have cost them the game if they were going up against Nick Bosa's defensive line.
I'll disagree with you there. I mean, you look at the numbers for Rodgers, 21st in completion percentage, 16th in yards per completion, 18th in yards per attempt. There's been a lot of talk lately, and if you look at a lot of the numbers, the separation point when it comes to sacks and pressures, a lot of times it moves more with the quarterback than it does with the offensive line. And Aaron Rodgers' style of play has always been so stat-focused. It's always been, don't throw interceptions, have a great touchdown-interception ratio, make sure I've got a great QBR. And I think that comes back to bite him in situations like this where he doesn't have much around him.
Right.
And he hasn't really, through a lot of his career, it's been him carrying the team, but he's had a good defense on the other side.
Absolutely.
Or when he doesn't have that defense, he's got a running game.
In fairness, I will give them credit. The defense of the Green Bay Packers has stepped their game up from the first half to the second half of the season. Up until week 17, like 12.8 points per game. But again, I will point out, and I look at the back half of the schedule, the last handful of games, 20-15 against the Redskins, not impressive. 21-13 against the Bears in a game that was closer than that score was. 23-10 against the Vikings. And granted, the Vikings were a playoff team, but the Vikings came into these playoffs as the one team that everybody looked and went, you can write them off. I mean, the win against the Saints was everything the Vikings had, and you saw what happened against San Francisco the next week. The Lions and the Vikings, again, were the last handful of games for the Packers. Not that impressive of wins, and that was at a point where they knew they had to fight for a 1 seed, so they should have had their best on the field. I'm going to say this about Green Bay. This is, to me, an 11-5 ball club masquerading as a 14-win team. They're good, but this is not the Green Bay teams of old. I think, and I've said this to you before we started taping, if New Orleans beats Atlanta at home in that Monday night game that they lost, if San Francisco loses to Seattle in Week 17 on that last-minute field goal that they got, anything else goes differently. You're looking at the Saints as a 2 seed, Green Bay as a 3 seed, and I think Green Bay loses in the divisional round. They're not what they are. This is the only game, and we're going to make our official picks in the last segment coming up in a few minutes. This is the one game in these playoffs, Minnesota, New Orleans included, the one game in the playoffs that I have no problem putting some scratch down on a team to cover. San Francisco is going to expose Green Bay. And I hate it because something that you and I were talking about pregame, Aaron Rodgers is still an elite level quarterback, and this is going to be a tarnish because people are going to look back and go, hey, Jimmy G just beat the crap out of Aaron Rodgers. But the reality is these Packers have been carried to where they are because Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. If I take the average NFL starting quarterback and put him on this Packers team, they're a 9-win team.
I think Green Bay and Seattle, the two teams that played last week, it's actually interesting that they met up because Green Bay and Seattle to me are so similar. You look at the fact that Green Bay's been outgained cumulatively on the season. Seattle played in, 11 one-possession games this year and won a bunch of them, but in that situation, you know the bottom's going to fall out eventually. Green Bay, teams that have been outgained cumulatively on the season that go into a conference title game, 0-6 historically.
Yep.
So this is not a team that inspires a ton of confidence. This is a team, much like Seattle, that won a lot of close games, and they had a quarterback that was fun to watch, but at the end of the day, it's not something you can ride all the way to a Super Bowl. And I think tomorrow we're going to see a similar thing. We saw Seattle get bounced last week. I think we'll see Green Bay most likely just based on the fact that, I mean, you look at all these numbers, San Francisco, 38 minutes of time of possession against Minnesota. If you keep Aaron Rodgers off the field for 40 minutes of a 60-minute football game and you're running the ball with that three-headed attack and Jimmy Garoppolo only has to throw it when he absolutely needs to, there's not a lot of paths to victory that Green Bay has. There's a ton for San Francisco. They can throw to win. They can run to win. They can turn Green Bay over to win the game. For Green Bay, it's got to be Aaron Rodgers, legendary performance, And going on the road, that's the other part of this, is in San Francisco, it's going to be tough for them to win on the road.
So we talked about balance, and you mentioned the run game, and I wanted to get into that very briefly. Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida, 5.1 yards per carry average between the three of them. And Green Bay is giving up 4.7 yards per carry. It is not their strong point. They need to get to the quarterback, take away the pass game, make Jimmy Garoppolo's offense be one-dimensional. But even if you do, you're talking 3 fresh backs. There's no other playoff team that has that amount of talent in the backfield, between the whole playoff field from start to finish. You've got other teams that might have a better back, and we're going to talk about Derrick Henry a lot coming up here in just a minute because we'll do our AFC preview in a minute. But San Francisco can pull one 4.7 yard per carry guy out and just plug in another one and keep everybody fresh, which at this point is a huge benefit. The Saints were exhausted. They lost. The Vikings put everything they had into the Saints game. They lost the next weekend. I mean, you can go see where fatigue has cost teams playoff wins. Doesn't seem like that's going to be a problem for San Francisco. But we talked about that balance. 250 passing yards, San Francisco won 6 of those games. If they had 130-plus rushing yards, they won 7 games with that number. They had 8 wins when they held opponents to 20 or fewer, and that they had the 8th fewest points allowed in the entire NFL. So you're looking at a team, and you nailed it, multiple paths to victory. They can ride the defense. They can ride the arm of Jimmy Garoppolo. They can run the ball, or they can just let George Kittle body slam the entire bus full of players from the other side. Because how many games did they win with George Kittle in the last 2 minutes coming up with just monster performances? They are the 1 seed because of George Kittle having 2 basically game-winning monster plays towards the end of a football contest. So with San Francisco, you talk about balance, you talk about that well-roundedness. This is arguably, to me, one of the better teams we've seen out of the NFC in a number of years now. There's been some really good ones, but we talk about the Saints. That was all offensive loaded. We've talked about the Bears a handful of years ago, defensively loaded. This team has every part. They may not be the best at any one thing, except pass defense, which, by the way, Aaron Rodgers, 4 games against top-rated passing defenses in his career. He's 0 for 4 and was beaten soundly in all of them. So everything to me, and again, we'll go on the record with picks in a few minutes, but everything to me screams this is set up for San Francisco to cakewalk the Packers.
Yeah, and Jimmy Garoppolo's playing well, but it feels like there's still this idea out there that maybe Garoppolo's not elite because of his running game, because of his defense, because of his coaching. He's 4th in the NFL in completion percentage, 6th in touchdowns, 6th in yards per completion, 3rd in yards per attempt. He's only 12th in yards because he doesn't have to throw the ball a ton.
Right.
But when it comes to numbers and what he's doing throw to throw and how quality each of those attempts is, he's one of the best in the league right
absolutely.
now.
Well, listen, when Bill Belichick says this is the guy, you listen, right? And I'm not... Brady Belichick, well, that's a whole new topic for another show.
He almost left for Washington when Robert Kraft forced him to ship Garoppolo out.
And we all understood, right? So if Hoodie says he's if Hoodie says he's the guy, I get it. Here's the thing, and I wanted to get into this. We talk about the one-name quarterbacks. You got Drew, you got Tom, you got Russell, you got Aaron, and I think those are probably the only 4 active right now. You can make an argument for a couple other guys. Jimmy G goes out. And if the 49ers win this game with him having a performance, I'm not talking about a handoff machine. I'm talking go out there, manage this game, win this game, and get to a Super Bowl. I think he's right there on the edge of becoming a one-name guy. The guy that next year it's Jimmy. That's who we're talking. And everybody knows who you're talking about. Sorry, Jimmy Johnson. There's a new NFL Jimmy in town. I think he's right there on the edge. And this game, he has an opportunity to define himself. But if I am San Francisco, I'm not banking on it. That's the only thing I want. The only way I want that to happen is if Green Bay says we're putting 7 in the box and we're going to make Jimmy Garoppolo beat us with his arm. And if they do that, then there's a chance that but the reality is, again, we talked about this, San Francisco's so balanced, but they don't have to rely on any one guy. So we'll take a quick break, come back here in just a second. We'll get our AFC Championship preview in, and then we'll come back after that and name some picks. Stick around, don't go anywhere. You're watching The Rob Brown Show.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors.
Come on, that's it. Let's go.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Rob Brown Show, coming to you via your delivery system of choice, special video edition. Alongside Jake Mitchell, I am Rob Brown, talking AFC and NFC Championship weekend. And Jake, one of the stories of the AFC Championship is the Tennessee Titans. They are probably, outside of Minnesota, the team that nobody really saw having a chance to make it. But here we are, not just going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, but knocking off the 1 seed to get here. This is a great story. Regardless of what happens to them, just making it here is a story. They might not be done.
Yeah, I mean, if I told you at the beginning of the playoffs, there's this quirky team that runs this unique offense, at least in 2020, that's going to get to the Super Bowl, you would have said, it's Baltimore.
Yep.
Baltimore. Instead, Tennessee got past Baltimore. They got past New England, and now they're here. And the way they've done it has been really interesting, at least, again, in the context of football in 2020, because all they've done is run the ball. Ryan Tannehill has not thrown for 100 yards in either of these playoff games so far. And I really think you look at this Titans team, and the biggest question, and I think Ryan Tannehill's a great story. Gets hurt in Miami, shipped off, goes, pays his dues as the backup, and when Mariota doesn't play well, he gets his shot and he leads the team all the way to the AFC title game. But the question is, if Derrick Henry does not play well, can Ryan Tannehill bring home a victory in this one? To me, that's the big doubt, because in all of their wins, and we'll get us into some numbers here in a second, but in a lot of Tennessee's wins recently, it's been Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry. If he has his off game, if he has his game where somehow that run game is stymied, can Tennessee win? It's very similar to the NFC title game we just got done talking about, where one team's got several paths, one team's got a single one. I almost feel like Tennessee's only got one single path, and it's through Derrick Henry.
Well, it is, but I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. And there's a stat you brought up, and I want you to read it here in just a second, about guys who are carrying for 25-plus carries a game or whatever it is for 4 weeks in a row. And that's where we are. But Derrick Henry isn't any other back. Honestly, the preview for this game should literally be me just looking into a camera and repeating Derrick Henry's name for 8 minutes, because that's what this is about for Tennessee. The dude's a monster. He's a pickup truck. I wish I could remember the name of the DB, but one of the DBs from last week's game came out afterwards, and they talked about Derrick Henry. And he said every time Derrick Henry takes a handoff, you have to make a business decision about your career. Do you want to tackle him and lose a week and a half off of your career every time you hit this guy? Or do you want to do the dive at his feet, hope you catch a shoelace the right way and he trips? Because that's what this guy is. He's a wrecking ball. And the thing about Ryan Tannehill, the savior, is I just need him to manage the game. I don't need Ryan Tannehill to do what I need Jimmy G to do against the Packers,
right,
what I need Aaron Rodgers to do for the Packers. I just need him to go out there, run the offense to keep the DBs and the linebackers honest, and let the guy in the backfield do the work, because he is the horse.
Yeah, that stat that you mentioned, when backs carry the ball 25-plus times 4 weeks in a row, in that fourth week, the yards per carry usually drops pretty significantly. I believe half yard is the number. Derrick Henry's carried the ball 96 times in just 3 games. 30 times against Baltimore, 34 times against New England, and 32 times in the regular season finale against Houston. The question is really if he can keep this up. He won a Heisman Trophy by being the guy that carried the ball a bunch. That yards per carry that Heisman year, it was okay. The thing was, he outlasted everyone else. Can he do that in the NFL? That's the question. And if not, that's where Tennessee, I think, is put into a tough position, because you look at, for example, they beat Kansas City in Week 10. Derrick Henry had 188 yards. Ryan Tannehill only had 181 passing yards. In losses, Derrick Henry 63 yards per game. In wins, 140 yards per game. The last 8 weeks, Tennessee has gone 7-1. In those 7 wins, he had over 100 yards. In the one loss, he had under 100 yards. So the theme that keeps on repeating itself is, as you said, and you told me before the show that all you were going to say this segment was Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry. That's the theme. Kansas City's got the 26th ranked rush defense in the league. They allow 130 approximately yards per game. that's kind of where this game is going to hinge, is can Kansas City stop the run? And I don't know if they can stop the run. It's going to rely, to me, on Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes at the very least making plays when they get possession. Because I mentioned that 40 minutes that San Francisco had against Minnesota last week. That's going to be Tennessee's.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be hold on to the ball as long as you can, limit time of possession. So the Chiefs are going to have to make every possession count against Tennessee, because Tennessee's going to try to make this a game where they've got the ball for 40 minutes and it's very, very limited in terms of possession count. So that's where this game hinges to me.
We saw last week when Houston took on Kansas City and jumped out to a big lead, and I mean to the point that everybody was, turn off this game, it's over. The one thing you can't do is let the Chiefs offense be on the field. And the best way to do that is grind the run.
Yep.
Grind the run. And I'm going to say this, and I don't think I'm going on a limb. Today, this moment, Derrick Henry's the best running back in the National Football League. There's not a guy I would take over him at this point, right? Alvin Kamara, name him. It doesn't matter. Aaron Jones, it doesn't matter.
As far as a pure running back, yes, Derrick Henry.
Just in terms of what he can do for your football team. He may be limited as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and that makes you one-dimensional. But right now, it doesn't matter. You can bring 3 running backs at Derrick Henry. He's still going to bust through. But you talk about fatigue, and that is a big deal, because not only are you talking about 4th game in a row where he's going to have to tote the rock 30-plus times. That has to happen. It's not an option. But to end the season, they went on the road to Houston in a very tough game, ended up running it out towards the very end of the game. At New England, at Tennessee, now they got to go to Kansas City. Not only are you talking about traveling a lot, you're talking about traveling to some of the toughest stadiums to play in the NFL. Mentally, what does that do to you if you are Tennessee? The good news is it's not about timing and rhythm and being mentally sound. It's just about turn around, let the big boys hit, let's go 4 yards in a cloud of dust, and then every now and then Derrick Henry's going to pop one. Like we talked about, I don't need Ryan Tannehill to go out there and put on a cape and pull his shirt to show the Superman-esque. I need him to turn around and give the ball to Derrick Henry and let him do what he does. And I almost feel bad because when we were setting up, I ran my NFC preview notes, and it just kept getting longer and longer. But when we put out our AFC preview notes, it's literally this long, and it's just Derrick Henry's name a bunch of different ways. And that's I don't feel like I'm lacking in prep for that. That's just what this game is. Kansas City, you need Pat Mahomes to be Pat Mahomes, and you need to score and score quick. You want to make this a track meet. Tennessee cannot get into a track meet with Kansas City, but you got to keep Pat Mahomes on the sideline. That's the only way to beat Kansas City, especially in Kansas City.
I do want to talk about Kansas City for a second and what this loss can mean, because I don't think this game is just about this season. You look at last year, they went on the road to New England during the regular season, lost, and then in the AFC title game, lost to New England at home. They went on the road during the regular season, lost to Tennessee 35-32. Now they're playing them at home. What's going to happen? I look at Kansas City, and to me, a young franchise, young quarterback, things are starting. It feels like things are building up. They've already built up. I mean, that team's good, but they haven't gotten it all the way. They haven't gotten it done yet and won a Super Bowl. If they lose again in an AFC championship at home, making it 2 years in a row, are you concerned that there's a lasting effect on the psyche of this franchise and the fact that this is supposed to be the beginning of a long run? If they open it up with 2 AFC championship losses back-to-back at home, does that have long-lasting damage on the Chiefs?
And as much as the answer is yes to that, I mean, the answer is yes, right? Like, if you lose title fights, at some point you realize you're not a championship, you're a good boxer, but you're not a championship caliber fighter, and that's what we're looking at here. And before anybody starts writing it off, because you're looking, well, this is arguably the easiest AFC championship game Kansas City's been in, these Titans went to New England and beat Tom Brady, and then they went to Baltimore and beat Lamar, and that Lamar Jackson-led Ravens squad was the team of destiny this year, right? That was the team everybody pointed at coming into the playoffs and went, that's the hot team. You have to beat Lamar and the Ravens. Guess who did that? Here come the Titans. And on top of that challenge that Kansas City goes into, you have to expect that in the back of their head there's something going, okay, we've been snake bit in this spot before, we can't do it again. You're waiting for Andy Reid to have his Andy Reid moment.
Yeah.
You're just waiting for it. It's coming. He's outlasted it so far. We thought it was last week against Houston, right? Everybody was making the Andy Reid jokes. And then all of a sudden, the second half, this team looks like a world-beating Chiefs squad. So you're waiting for that Andy Reid moment, and you know that the Chiefs have struggled in this spot before. The Titans, on the other hand, have got to be confident right now. Nothing but confidence. We just beat Brady and Lamar on the road, back to beat them.
Yep.
Not like we won some dogfights. They beat them. Now they come in and they're still the underdog, despite knocking off the best quarterback of all time and the best quarterback currently playing football right now, Lamar Jackson. They beat them and are still a full touchdown dog. They're coming into this angry as hell. And if there's two words I don't want next to each other, it's Derrick Henry and angry.
Yeah, I mean, New England, the number one scoring defense, Baltimore, the number one scoring offense. Beating those two teams in the playoffs, that's only happened twice before. The 88 49ers and the 04 Pats, what did those teams do? They went on to win the Super
Absolutely.
Bowl. This Titans team, it's possible.
Absolutely.
It's certainly possible.
Let's go ahead and run to our final break. We'll come back here in just a minute. We'll take a look at the picks and predictions. We'll give you your gambling lines and let you know who we think's moving on to the Super Bowl. He's Jake Mitchell. I'm Rob Brown. You're watching The Rob Brown Show. We'll be right back.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Rob Brown Show. NFL Championship weekend rolls on. We're just a couple of weeks away from the Super Bowl. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our picks. Lines on both games have been pretty solid and relatively consistent. Starting off with the NFC, San Francisco 7-point favorite, bounced between 6 and 10 opening. It looks like it's settled in around 7.5. And an over-under of 45, which I want to talk about because it honestly seems a little low. San Francisco's a 30-point ball club to me by themselves. Over on the AFC side, 7.5-point favorites are the Chiefs with a 52 set as the over-under, which after what we saw Kansas City do last week, they ran out of fireworks because they scored too much. That's what the Chiefs are right now. You've got some numbers, you got some facts you wanted to throw out there as far as our lines.
Well, and you can actually get odds on whether or not the Niners run out of fireworks this weekend.
I don't hate that as a prop bet.
That is a prop that exists.
I don't hate that as a prop bet.
There's also, there's several. In fact, recent news, there's odds on whether Odell will be seen slapping a butt on camera next year during the regular season.
Which,
during
by the way,
broadcast. So
how did
the prop
Odell
bet market
get off?
is great.
Why don't you settle down, Antonio Brown Jr.? Odell, relax for a few days.
But no, point being, the prop market is always a fun one to look at. But as far as the raw numbers, San Francisco, actually some interesting ones. 1-4 against the spread when they're favored by 6 or more. 60% of bets right now were on San Francisco minus the 7.5. They're 1-3-1 against the spread in their final 5 home games. But the one thing to consider there is similar. They gave up 30 points a game in their last 5, but they returned Dee Ford, they returned Richard Sherman, and we saw against Minnesota that changed things a little bit. So some of the late regular season numbers with San Francisco, a little deceiving. On the Green Bay side, they've got the 3rd best Super Bowl odds right now, and only leading Tennessee. But right now it looks like a long shot for Green Bay, and a ton of the money is on the San Francisco side. So you can kind of see where the public is right there. The interesting thing about Tennessee and Kansas City is Tennessee's won 4 straight against Kansas City and 5 of the last 6 at Kansas City. So there's an argument to be made that Tennessee mentally kind of has the edge because in recent years, Tennessee has gone to Kansas City and really beat up the Chiefs.
And we've talked about that a minute ago, how I really think the mental aspect of that game is going to come into play. You've got to wonder, as we talked about, if Pat Mahomes has got it in the back of his head that, hey, this is where I always struggle, and maybe that kind of brings that self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. But if he starts looking into these numbers, the fact that you're right, Tennessee has basically made Kansas City do what they want, that can't help that. You know, so you talk about that self-fulfilling prophecy. If you go into this with a spot of, well, this is just what Tennessee does and this is what Kansas City does, this all follows that trend.
And I think the other thing for Kansas City mentally is what I mentioned in the last segment, and that is that last year they were beat during the regular season, and during the AFC Championship were beat again by the Patriots. Does the fact that Tennessee beat Kansas City this year and now is going to meet him again, and you're going to see Derrick Henry again? He had almost 200 yards in that game. that's another side of this where mentally, I think Tennessee does have the edge mentally in this one. Is it going to play out that way? We'll make our picks in a second.
Where's the money coming in on that game?
The money is actually on the Kansas City side, just based on there's a lot of the public that just looks at it and says, hey, I think Tennessee is going to, the bottom's going to fall out at some point, similar to Green Bay or similar to a Seattle, where there's this team that's special. And I think the comparison that you can make there is the 60-win Hawks years back, where eventually you get to the real quality teams that are considered the best in the league, and you lose. And it's not just basketball. You can find those examples in the NFL, where the Jags, I think, to me, the Titans actually, an even better comparison would be the Jags of a couple years ago, where Jacksonville was exciting and fun and goofy and Blake Bortles, and it was all, a great story. But then you get to the AFC title game, and eventually there's a situation where a quarterback's got to make a drive. He's got to get you that touchdown. And can Ryan Tannehill do that? I'm not sure, and that's where the question is for Tennessee.
I heard somebody the other day put it a really interesting way, which is, great teams beat great stories. Great stories are what make sports fun, but great teams will beat great stories. You go back to, and even, it doesn't matter what sport you're talking about.
Yeah.
Any sport,
Every
March Madness, we always see that one team that makes a deep run. You always see Shaka Smart showing up and making noise. But then they get to the Elite Eight, the Final Four, where the best of the best are left, and they get wiped out of the tournament with rare exception. So the question is, Tennessee is a great story this year, and we all know that. Are they a great team? And that's what this money line says no to. You're talking a 7.5-point differential in an AFC championship game. So the money says that Tennessee is not a great team. They're a great story alone. I'm going to disagree. I think they're a very, very good team. I don't want to say great yet because they are one-dimensional, but it's kind of one of those things where a train is also one-dimensional, but you're not going to stop it from getting to the destination. So I want to bring in one more voice before we get out of here, and that would be former gambling professional, current guy in a very dimly lit chair who's serving as our live studio office. My man, Chris Seaman, is here to give his thoughts on everything we've said so far. It's all been right, as well as his thought on our picks for this weekend.
Very close to being right, Rob, as you usually are. Good job today, fellas, on your show. Got a couple of comments on the two games, though, that I think you leave out. One is in the first game, in the San Francisco game, I think experience is a big factor in that one. My granddaddy used to say it's a little bit of a tight pucker feeling when you're going to a chance to play for the Super Bowl. And I have a lot of hope for Jimmy. Give him the one name that over the next 10 years you're going to see a lot of Jimmy. But this is his first go at getting to go to the big game. And I think that's a factor that if, and this is an if, so I'm not saying it's going to affect my pick, but if the Packers get a special teams play or get some factor that has them in the game by halftime, you take Aaron Rodgers going down the stretch. If San Fran comes out and blows them out early, gets a big lead where they have them pinned back, and that's the way you control Aaron Rodgers. So that experience is a big factor. I also believe in the conspiracy theory that State Farm is a big sponsorship, so they certainly want to see their two quarterbacks in the State Farm Super Bowl. That being said, in the other game, I really appreciate your analogy to the train and Derrick Henry. What a great story he's become in Tennessee. But one factor you guys haven't mentioned in that game, it's going to be cold. It's going to be beyond cold. Now, that you would think will help Tennessee running the ball. But I think in this case, and I don't know who's going to make their picks here first, but I'm ready whenever you guys are. I don't think you can stop that. Is it me?
Yes, we're letting you go first. Congratulations.
I don't think you can stop that offensive juggernaut that even if they're down, Kansas City will not be out of a game. They will always be within one Patrick throw of winning the game. But I'm going to take both dogs in this for these two games. One, because I'm not going to root against Aaron Rodgers to be out of the game. Even if he's down by 15 something going into the fourth, I think he gets that hook. Remember we were chatting about the hook. You got to watch that hook. And in this case, the hook is a big factor. And I'll take Aaron in the hook just to be that close to the game. And the other one, I just think because it's going to be so cold.
19 degrees at kickoff.
Yes, that's I
don't care enough about football to sit out.
I'm going to be cold on my couch watching that, and I'm going to take, I believe that Derrick Henry train will keep him in the game. And I'll tell you what, the other factor, kind of a factor B, is the coach. You know, isn't he a little bit of a descendant of the, what's that guy's name up in New England? Finds a way to win. I think he's learned a lot, and he shows that he can be an amazing coach on the sideline. He's going to keep Tennessee in the game. And so I'm going to take both dogs, but I'm going to take the over in the NFC, and I'm going to take the under, which if you're a gambler, taking the favorite and the under is hard, or the dog and the under is a lot easier to do. I'm going to take the under in the Kansas City game.
There you have it. Dimly lit chair sitter Chris Seaman and his picks for the AFC and NFC Championship game. Jake, I hand it to you, man.
I don't know if there's anyone that wants Tennessee to lose this game. Isn't it Mike
No,
Vrabel? Isn't it Mike Vrabel?
Yeah. Oh well. Mike Vrabel has one reason that he does not want this team to. If you haven't heard that story, I'm not going to tell it here. The internet's your friend.
I mean, I think you look at these two games, and to me, San Francisco is the better team. They're just flat out the better team. I like San Francisco minus the 7.5, but I like the under because I think San Francisco's style of game that's going to win tomorrow is going to be run the ball, keep Aaron Rodgers off the field, don't let him get momentum, don't let him get rolling. So I actually like the favorite in the under. I like San Francisco and under 45 in that one. As far as Tennessee and Kansas City goes, you know, I think Tennessee's going to ugly this game up. I think that Derrick Henry's going to ugly this game up. Do I think that Tennessee's going to win the game? No. I actually, if we're talking straight up, I think that eventually you find the situation where the quarterback has to make the play, and I'll take Patrick Mahomes straight up over Ryan Tannehill, but I like Tennessee plus the 7.5 because you mentioned the weather, also the running game. Those two factors under 52, I'm going to go under in that one. I'm going to go Tennessee plus 7.5, and like I said, I think they'll ugly it up, but at the end of the day, I'm going to take who I think is the best quarterback left right now, and I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes, and the guy who's only not in the one-name club because his first name's Patrick.
You know, I don't hate the pick. I am actually going to go Tennessee in this game for the one reason you said. They're going to ugly it up, and they have to. The only way to beat Patrick Mahomes is to keep him on the bench. The one guy left in these playoffs that I believe is good enough to guarantee that will happen will be Derrick Henry and these Tennessee Titans. And Mike Vrabel, whatever he's done, I don't know how, but he has crafted this culture in Tennessee where they don't care if it's not pretty. I love it. I mean, it feels like an old school football team, right? Defensively, we're going to get in your face. We're going to mug you from the beginning. And it's good. Kansas City might have the most uncoverable skill group left in these playoffs, maybe from the beginning. Tennessee's going to get in your face and go, hey, if you beat us, but you're going to hurt after it's over. And offensively, it's the same thing. Get it behind the big uglies, give it to the guy that totes the rock, and let him do it. They're going to do that. It's going to be tough, but you guys mentioned it. 19 degrees at kickoff. I will take the team that is the better running team, and that is Tennessee right now. Kansas City can run the ball. There's no doubt about it. When they get Tyreek and Co. going, they can run the ball. But if Derrick Henry, you mentioned earlier, you said, well, you know, Derrick Henry's fourth game, yards per game. He's been going for 180. So if his yards come down 50 yards, he's still having a career playoff game. So, you know, I'm going to ride that horse until it falls out from under me. I'm going to take Tennessee to win straight up. Definitely take the points, but I will take them to win straight up. I am going to go under, though. I do think we're talking about a game. They're not going to run out of fireworks this time. 19 degrees and a slugfest, not exactly a recipe for a high-shooting game.
The game, they won't be shooting off any fireworks.
True story.
Anyway.
Green Bay, San Francisco, 7.5-point favorites of the 49ers. This might be the easiest money of the playoffs for me. I'm put the scratch down on San Francisco. They are going to cover. Look, I like Aaron Rodgers. I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL actively. But what San Francisco is doing right now, if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson, this San Francisco team would be the talk of the town, right? It's what Lamar has been doing with the football, what the Ravens did. That was entertaining, but this is the most well-rounded, most balanced football team that I can remember since the Patriot highlight days, right? Yeah. Back in the days when Mike Vrabel was playing for New England, and they could beat you offensively or defensively. This is a well-rounded San Francisco team. Green Bay has one path to victory. You talked about that. Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams. This is the team built to stop that. They are going to take Davante Adams away and make Aaron Rodgers find other guys. He didn't have anybody else. Davante Adams caught 84 balls this year. You know who the next closest guy was? 35 all year. That's it. He's got nobody else. So as far as I'm concerned, this is easy money. I'll take San Francisco. That over-under, I don't like where it's at. It's like right there on the cusp because I can see San Francisco throwing 35. I don't know if Green Bay contributes anything. So I'm going to say, I mean, I don't even want to touch that over-under, but since I have to pick one, I'm going to take the over because I can see San Francisco getting into the 30s, and I'll trust Aaron Rodgers to put at least a touchdown on the board.
I actually think that the under in Green Bay and San Francisco is the best bet of the weekend.
Really?
Because you look at San Francisco, as you said, best pass defense in the NFL. Statistically, you know, there's a New England argument there, but the best pass defense in the NFC for sure. Green Bay in the last 6 only allowing 15.7 points per game. I think you're going to see a game where Aaron Rodgers isn't able to do much. San Francisco's forced to run the ball, and I think it'll be a field position game. I think it's going to be one of those games where you say, hey, Aaron Rodgers, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo, there's going to be a lot of points. And then it's a punt fest, at least for the first half. I really think that the under in the NFC Championship is actually the best way to go because there's always explosion potential for Pat Mahomes. There's always the potential that out of nowhere he throws 5 touchdowns in the second half and all of a sudden the over hits. To me, I think Green Bay, San Francisco is actually the under in that one is the way to go.
So if you were looking for gambling help, you got none today. You're welcome. Sorry about it. That is going to wrap it up for us. Thanks to Mr. R.J. Murdoch for putting all this together. Chris Seaman back there in the dimly lit chair. Well done, sir. Jake Mitchell, pleasure as always, my friend. Good to be back on the air with you, pal.
Absolutely, man. It was fun.
We're going to come up with a schedule at some point to make another one of these, so stick around, hopefully before the Super Bowl. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. My name is Rob Brown for Jake Mitchell, R.J. Murdoch, Chris Seaman, and everybody else here. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you next time.